former president in his efforts for re-election. Joining us now in studio for more on these new delegate rules is Hector Barajas, spokesperson for the California Republican GOP party. Thank you for being here, Hector. Really appreciate you being here and talking about this.
It is a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, let's talk about the previous rules before we talk about the new rules. They were in place for about 2 decades, so just let us know about how that system worked and how people got delegates under it.
So we've got 169 delegates, and during the previous rules, you received delegates based on whether you won a congressional district or not. And so it was done by all the different 53 congressional districts, and that's how delegates were parceled off. At the same time, you got the chairwoman, you've got the national committee man, national committee woman, who also were delegates themselves, and so that's how the 169 were given away.
So under these new rules, we said that if a candidate gets over 50%, they win all 169. Let's just talk about if that situation where it's a plurality and somebody doesn't get all 50%, over 50%. What happens then with the delegates and the apportioning?
Then they're going to do by proportional. And so whoever, let's say, for example, you've got Donald Trump, let's say he gets 40%, let's say DeSantis gets 30%, and then you got Tim Scott or Nikki Haley get the other one. So then they're going to be parceled off by proportion. And so, and when we look at these rules changes as to what we had before and what we have now, you've got, the executive committee gathered together, and they decided to put together kind of an insurance policy, because we are following, we got to play with the chessboard that's put in front of us. And the Republican National Committee, under Rule 16, they said you've got to have a winner-take-all and also provide a portion of apportionment. And so the executive committee, which is made up of 100 members, then those individuals are put together by representatives from the congressional delegation, the Assembly, the Senate, Republicans, in addition to our county chairman, our regional chairman, and they help make up those 100 individuals that then are voted on by the board of directors. They said, okay, we've got our convention that's coming up at the end of September. So let's put these rules in place, and should the membership at that convention decide to make any changes, then they've got the ability to do so. But their deadline is October 1st. And so now we've got an insurance policy to make sure that we follow rule number 16, which is from the Republican National Committee, because if we don't, then we could lose up to 50% of our delegates. And that's a lot of delegates that we would potentially lose.
So just to recap what we talked about so far, over 50% you get all. If anyone gets, if it's less than 50%, the leader, then it's proportionate.
Correct.
And the prompt for this really came from the National Committee.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are critics who say the prompt may have come from the National Committee, but this is clearly benefiting former President Trump. And I want to talk to you about a guy named Dan Schnur, a political analyst and professor. And he described it as the Front-Runner Protection Act. He told a reporter from Cal Matters, I'm going to quote this, "Whether or not there are Trump's fingerprints on this change, it's pretty clear that it wouldn't have happened without the campaign's strong support." So what do you say when you hear that this is really just benefiting former President Trump's campaign, and that there were other plans in place, and that DeSantis' campaign liked other plans, and Trump's campaign liked this plan, and this is the plan that you guys took?
At the end of the day, the person that this benefits is Republican voters in California, because it now makes sure that everyone is campaigning across all 13 media markets. So we've got 58 counties, we've got 13 major media markets. So now we've got to have everyone campaigning. And so once we've made these rules changes, as you know, and you've been reporting it, and we appreciate this, is now we've got Donald Trump, now we've got DeSantis, now we've got Tim Scott, and we're looking to get a couple other individuals that are going to be coming to California, to the California Republican Party convention, to speak to our delegates, to speak to our membership. And they're going to be in California. And it's not just as we see year after year where California is kind of an ATM machine. Now they're coming out here to speak to the delegates, speak to the members, and campaign across the state.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that convention in Anaheim in just a minute. But you just said that everybody's going to campaign under this new plan. And a lot of candidates don't necessarily see it that way, in part because it just feels like it's going to make California less competitive in a way, because previously and under other plans there was a consolation prize, right? If you didn't get over 50%, you'd at least get some delegates. Now some of these other candidates are saying, I got no chance of getting over 50%. Trump's going to get it. I'm not even going to go to California. So what do you say to that criticism of this new plan?
Well, on July 31st, on June 31st, you had an article by Spectrum News by Maggie Cannon that looked at the polling here in California. And it showed Donald Trump at about 50%. And as you know, as I do, between now and March, I mean, that's an eternity in politics. And so what it's really going to force is, are you going to have the organization? Are you going to have boots on the ground? Are you going to go, door to door to really go and talk to our members? And that is really, you're going to have that type of organization. Now, if you think you could just fly in and just go visit one portion of the state and just call it a day, that's not how you win, and that's not how you're going to win the presidency of the United States. You're going to have that organization. And what this really puts in place is the sense of having an organization. But at the same time, should the membership of the California Republican Party decide it wants to do something different, it's going to have that choice and that ability to do so. But now we've got some sort of insurance policy set aside so we don't lose 50% of our delegates, which is probably the most important thing because, we've got 169, Texas has 162, you've got Arizona at about 26 and Nevada at about 34, and so that's, we've got quite a bit of delegates and quite a bit of power. And now that we have the presidential primary in March and not in June, because when we used to have it in June, everything was already set in place. Now we have it. Now we have the ability to actually impact who's going to be that Republican nominee.
Yeah, March 5th. It's going to be a big day.
It is.
Let's talk a little bit about this fall convention you just talked about. It's going to be coming up in Anaheim, and former President Trump will be speaking there. Are there any concerns in the California GOP about former President Trump coming, especially in wake of these indictments that we've seen so far, the third one coming just last week and a possible fourth one coming soon?
He is a candidate running for office. There's a lot of accusations, as there have been, throughout his career. We also have, Governor DeSantis coming out, Tim Scott coming out, and we anticipate having other individuals. And, going out and addressing the membership of the California Republican Party, he's got a message he wants to give out there. Now, we will see, as you and I and the rest of the nation will see, how all these accusations kind of shake out, throughout this year and the following year, and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, so we talked about Tim Scott, Ron DeSantis, possibly others. That's interesting. We didn't know about that. What can we expect from these speeches at this convention?
They're gonna make their pitches as to why you should vote for them, why they should win those delegates, those 169. They're going to make, I'm sure it's going to be a really good attended place because you've got to remember that the day before is the presidential debate at the Reagan Library. And so, we're going to have quite a bit of folks there. I know you and the press will all be there too. And then now we've got the convention. So, I mean, it's just, in politics, it's, it's kind of an award ceremony, right? It's kind of like on Oscars time when you go to all these presidential debates. And so it should be a lot of fireworks and a lot of fun.
Well, there's been a lot of conversation, Hector, especially coming out of 2020, about the validity of those results. Where are you? Where is the California Republican Party on the feeling about the validity, not just of 2020, but also what we're expecting in 2024?
What we're going to expect in 2024, I mean, look, when you look at 2020, right now we've got President Joe Biden who's in office, and we're looking to make a better nation, make a better place for us to try to get more Republicans elected into office. We're seeing what this inflation is doing for Californians, not just Californians, but really everyone across the state, across the nation. And so we're going to get ourselves organized, and we're going to try to retire him.
Yeah, and when we think about the Senate race, too, I mean, it's interesting what's coming up with Senator Dianne Feinstein's seat opening up. Yeah. How do you feel about the Republican field for that office? Well,
we're still going to see what other candidates jump in. I know there's a couple other folks, and I was in the lobby there watching the Dodgers win today, and so we'll see if we've got Steve Garvey who puts his hat in the ring or not. So.
And one more time about that convention in Anaheim. What's the date of it?
It's going to be at the end of this month, so it's the 28th, 29th,
okay,
and 30th, and so we're looking forward to it.
Aside from the candidate speeches, what else is going to be happening there?
Well, we've got, obviously, the party making rules, which is probably the committees get together, and you also have the different organizations get together and say, okay, it's time to get ourselves organized and ready to go for the March election.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see it all come down. That's going to be later this month. Hector Barajas, spokesperson for the California GOP, thank you so much for coming down to Sacramento for this interview.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Really glad to have you. All right.